So you guys have that appetite for these like new exploratory missions, which, maybe you're raising money off of a report from an engineer and, it's hopes and dreams. But it's a little different when you can go out to Indonesia and then run your hand over the soil and grab something that has value. What's that like to step into a deal that has visibility right there on the surface? It's got to be surreal.
Surreal and fantastic, because something that I've always looked for in a deal is how fast can you get into revenue generation. Too many companies think I'm going to build this massive multi-million dollar ounce deposit. It takes much time, years and years of drilling, and tens of millions at times, because you're in remote areas, you're going deep into the ground, you're going through mountains. So it can be very costly before you even get to a point of potentially getting revenue generation. I knew I wanted something different for when I was going to jump into my own position as I am right now as the CEO of the company, but to raise funds from my network as well. I wanted something that stood out. So being able to actually go there, you get it. The moment you're on the ground, you understand it's everywhere. It's all shallow pit. As we were speaking earlier, it's truly God's gift to mankind, what they've done with weathering this, where it's all within 30 meters of essentially soil and clay, where I'm really simplifying this. Don't let my geologists hear this, because there absolutely is much more going on. But for investors hearing this, it really is. You're taking an excavator, you're scooping it, you're mixing it to desired nickel concentration, you put it into a dump truck, and we drive 9 kilometers down the road where we sell it at the barge. And that's our process. So it's very simplified. So to be able to do that so quickly, to be able to find revenue generation within the first 15 months as a company and as a private company, it's very rare in this space. And that's why I was so interested with this idea of this company when it first came to me.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the on-site process, which I think is fairly unique, that you can get some refinement in terms of getting the resources more concentrated. My knowledge is going to the gravel quarry down the road and watching them do 3/4 minus with the screening, and then out pops out something that goes in the back of my truck and a 10-yard dump truck and comes out to gravel our roads or something. So can you explain like what physically happens? You got what, backhoes and bulldozers, and then it goes into what next?
So excavators and bulldozers, that's what we're using, and of course dump trucks, where you would go onto site. It's called selective mining, where essentially every meter you're going down, you are checking for the concentration. So you go down a meter with an excavator, you take that out, you separate it, you send it out to a lab, and then you find out what you're dealing with there. A lot of this area, it goes in lenses. I can't call it homogeneous, even though it's very close to that, but it goes in lenses. Think of like a contact lens, where that lens could be 1.6% nickel. Then the next lens could be 1.2% nickel. So you've got to be able to separate that. Hence why before I said it is a little bit more complicated than I first made it. But that's why you have the specialty of Indonesia, and that's why they've become the world's most dominant nickel player, doing 63% of the world's nickel production last year. Is because they have the expertise, but more importantly, they've got the infrastructure and they've got the deposits. So you get out there, you do those tests. From there, you start understanding, okay, this pile is 1.6%, this pile is 1.4%, etc. And you essentially build these domes and you bring them off into different areas where you store them. Then once you get to a certain amount, in our case, it's 7,500 metric tons, that's what we put on a barge every single time. Then we tell ourselves, okay, we need to mix to this percentage. You mix that percentage, you get your assay tests, you start hauling, you bring that 9 kilometers down the road to where the barge is, you load up that barge and get payment on delivery. It really is, again, I use the word simple, but in the grand scheme of what mining usually is, that is incredibly simple. And that's why we're able to go to production so quickly. We couldn't have done that without Robert Chandra. If you don't have someone who is Indonesian, if you don't have someone who understands how their people work, how their local communities work, how the government works, you're at an extreme disadvantage. For us, it is our strategic advantage, having something like that, where I like to say we're 100% Canadian owned, 100% Indonesian operated.